with Senator Joanne Brown standing by. Good morning, Senator.
Hi, Chris and Bree. Good morning.
Good morning.
And Jason, I know Jason's there somewhere.
Yeah. Jason, what's up with your tie this morning?
Good morning.
A little
Hi, how are you, Jason?
loose.
I'm doing good. Good to see you as always.
Always, same here.
Yeah, good to see you, Auntie Joanne.
Senator, you look like you might have. I don't know if you saw Jason's TikTok commercial.
Oh gosh.
No, I didn't.
I'll send it to you. It's a good one.
It may motivate you to buy a chicken sandwich, Senator.
Or two.
Yeah. We hope that it would.
Okay, we froze.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you are, Senator. I don't believe we've ever really asked you your opinion on just the way things are going here, relative to like the COVID-19 response. I mean, we talked to you a lot about session and all this stuff, but I don't think we've bent your ear about just what do you think of this 9-week surge that we're in?
I think it's sad. I mean, just the number of people that are passing away and people that are getting infected. And, before it was people at a distance. And now even for me in my circle and even people that I know in my circle that are off island that are catching COVID and being affected by it. And, for the first time really looking at it, wondering, gosh, is this something we're going to get through in a few months? And now that we're heading into 2 years, I'm like, is this something we're going to have to live with into the future? And that's a scary thought. It's how do we manage all this and, trying to protect ourselves. You have people that take every precaution and then still end up with COVID. And, the ability of our healthcare system and the resources involved and just the health and well-being of our people physically, mentally. It's very depressing. It's very depressing when you see, we know, death is a part of life, but when it's facilitated because of this virus, that's even more disappointing because there's a lot of people that have many years ahead of them that are either passing away or when you hear that there may be some lifelong physical impacts on their health and well-being. There's no pluses in here. It's just what can we do collectively as a community to get through this, and then just worldwide, what's the next variant that's going to come out, and is that something that we can fight, or what do we do? And I think everyone wants to do the right thing, but we're seeing how quickly things can shift and in not a good way. And it's just hoping and praying that we continue to stay safe and that we're going to get through this.
Right on.
Yeah.
Well, session's been a thing.
Yeah, we came back Friday of last week, and so now it's Tuesday, so we're into our third day for session this month.
I've seen some like procedural tangles on the floor a lot in the last few days, Senator.
Yeah, you got to wonder why. Certainly, I know some concerns were raised with regards to the, our process now since we passed our bill and the governor has since signed my bill with regards to public notice requirements. Wanting to see the legislature also comply with the same expectations we're having of the rest of our community and the rest of the government of Guam with regards to public meeting notices. And so far this round, we've not been successful. We've been outvoted by our colleagues. And, it's important. I mean, we understand if there's an emergency issue that needs to be brought before the legislature, there's nothing to stop that process. And the legislature has the legal authority. The legislature doesn't have to meet all these public notice requirements that we've since passed by law. But, we don't want to be in a situation where it's don't do as I do, do as I say. I think if we're going to think these bills are important enough to pass them into law, then by all means, we should also follow what we expect the rest of our people to do.
And just to be clear, are you talking about this firearms bill?
Well, the bill was motioned, when we got to motions, the bill was motioned to be put on. It was not part of the original listing, to my understanding, that was addressed by the Committee on Rules with regards to the 5-day notice. So the public has the opportunity when we go into session to be aware of what legislation we're addressing on their behalf. I've seen over the years sometimes there's such a rush, and I don't understand it. I mean, we live in a very small community. But for some of my colleagues, and it's not just now, it's in the past as well, they want to have as many bills under their belt as possible. And the people at Guam got to wonder sometimes how much legislation we're giving to them, and do they want all the legislation we want to give them to constantly be changing the laws? That's why even I've never been an advocate that I've got to have 100 bills introduced and passed into law. I think there's needs in certain areas, certainly, and that's what I pursue. But for some, getting their bill on the agenda is it's scoring the goal for that session. And yet, for me, and that's why I've always been an advocate of it, I think we need to ensure with our government, in order to have a means of knowing that our government is operating in our interests, not its own individual interests and the interests of certain people in certain places, that we have that level of awareness and transparency, so we have that many more ears and that many more eyes keeping track of what public officials, that includes us that are elected, all the way down to whatever you think is the entry-level job in the government of Guam. They have an eye on what we're doing with their time and what we're doing with their money. I mean, this legislation, obviously, it's not going to save lives, but it's definitely going to deter and in some cases can stop corruption in the government. And that's why I definitely am an advocate of moving to making sure whatever effort we can to have that transparency out there and that accessibility of our public to their government. I think that's critically important.
I was looking at the release that Senator Tello came out with a release, and she was talking about, and this is what we're talking about, the 5-day notice. Allow the public notification of bills on the agenda. We did have a comment from one of our prized viewers here on Facebook, Rosemary. Does the discussion on Senator Moylan's bill being discussed yesterday and not following the 5-day public notice invalidate yesterday's session, in your opinion?
Well, I mean, it doesn't invalidate it because of the authority of the legislature to convene and address legislation, the whole authority that created us as a body. But again, I just because we're the lawmakers, I don't think we should be the lawbreakers. I think we should comply with that. And then it gives the opportunity for the community, even gives opportunity for senators to walk into session and be prepared to know what bills are on the agenda, or, what positions we're going to take, what amendments we want to do. Where, the process has been, we have rules, and then we go in at motions and we just throw everything else on the agenda that we want to. And then even for us in the legislature, we're not sometimes prepared at that moment in time to properly review the bill, or if we have questions, get the key people that need to be able to respond to that available to be able to ask that. And then we pass things that we're not entirely sure what the consequences are. Nothing's perfect, but I think if we have a more organized process of going into the legislature with regards to session, and you and the public, the media is aware of it, there's nothing to lose with that. But I think constantly throwing things on and then the public doesn't even know things are being entertained. I mean, that's how things get passed, that we're turning around going, hey, what the heck was that? And why did that get passed into law? So I think we should make a better effort. And I think, the message is to my colleagues that are not following this practice, that feel they're above the law. Like I said, it's don't do as I do as I say policy. And I just don't think that's right. By all means, we should be making every effort, because it's something we hear from the public. We have an expectation of that. I mean, certainly now in our days of modern communication, we should be able to expect that of our leadership, because we're only here. I've often looked at our role. We're just caretakers for a time. We're caretakers for a time. And for the time that we're here, I think we should be responsible with how we carry out our duties. And more importantly, I think we need to have an informed public to know how we're managing and caretaking their government for the time that we're here. And so it's going to be unfortunate if the legislature continues this practice. Certainly every time they continue in the future, I'm going to object to it. And it's unnecessary. I think we should just follow the rules. We create them, we should follow them.
Can we get your reaction here with this whole a bizarre triangle with the public auditor, the AG, and Senator Frank Blas Jr. relative to the public auditor's audit that had come out, citing $3 million in question costs, a conflict of interest, and a non-compliance with local procurement law? This is the audit about the hotel procurement early on. And so Senator Blas...
I think...
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, it's raised a lot of questions, no doubt. I mean, we understand it's an emergency circumstance, and this pandemic is certainly something we've not dealt with in our government to the extreme of what we're having to deal with now. But there are procedures. I mean, there's many plans that have been put in place and practice sessions that have been put in place to prepare And while it's a different circumstance of procuring, we're not procuring, for example, to do a recovery after an earthquake or the things we're more familiar with of typhoons. But you want to make sure that it's not an opportunity because we are going through an emergency or a crisis situation, that we don't have government officials taking advantage of the public trust because the opportunity is there to do it. And so I think this circumstance and to prepare us for future incidences, hopefully we don't have them in our lifetime, but if it happens again, that we know and can ensure that there's accountability in that process. Because nevertheless, even though we are responding to a pandemic, and certainly there's more money, Chris and Bree, floating around in our government than we've ever had at a single time in our history. More the reason we have to ensure that it's being spent properly and responsibly. Otherwise, the idea is, of course, the public auditor can go find the problem, but then nothing happens with it. There's no consequence. Right. Our current administration, the governor has openly said she doesn't support holding, directors financially accountable, for example, if they don't properly follow the law. And they're not responding for things like FOIA, for example. She doesn't like penalties being issued. Well, if it's not that, then the governor needs to take responsibility within her administration to ensure that her directors are complying or her staff is properly executing their duties. If not, there should be a consequence. There should be a penalty to that. And when you don't see it happening, then it seems to be acceptable that these practices are normal rather than the exception. And when you're talking about the amounts of monies that are we're talking millions of dollars, we should all be concerned about how that's being spent, because it's the people's money. And if we're not following the procurement requirements, even under emergency, we have set processes to follow even under emergency procurement. Then if there's no consequence, then I guess, it's jungle rules and we can just do whatever we want with public money. And I think most people would say, I don't agree with that.
Yeah, most people. When you definitely want the people you elect to office to be saying that.
I agree, but that's also for our community to decide. I mean, we love the politics in Guam. It's our pastime. I mean, I grew up here. I was born and raised on Guam. It's always been a pastime. And, we like our favorite candidates. And when we're excited when we watch the election and we see who wins and who doesn't win. But there's a bigger issue of the actual leadership that happens after that, and whether or not, the people are getting what they want. They get the leadership they want. If they're not happy with what they have, then maybe they need to reevaluate who they're putting in office, because it's a tough job all around. I mean, there's no easy answers to it. But if you see these type of things happening, these type of practices that we know is not right, and there's no consequence to it, it encourages people to continue to go down that road. And, I used to think that these type of actions happening, they're the exception to the rule. They're not the standard. And sometimes these days I'm kind of wondering, is this now the standard, that these type of practices are acceptable because there's no consequence to it? Oh, we made a mistake, so what? Let's just move on. And I just don't think that's how our government should run and should operate, because it opens up the opportunity for these types of abuse to continue. And then you got to look, who's benefiting from it. I've always looked at that with legislation. If it's special interest legislation, contracts, I'm always, who's the beneficiary of this? What's the agenda? Was it obtained the right, proper way, or, are we making sure certain people get taken care of? And it's not uncommon in government. And if it's allowed to happen, it'll continue to happen, because I'd like to think, that people don't abuse it. But I'll tell you, in my time in public life, I've never seen anything motivate like greed. I'd like to think it's wanting to do good things for our people, but greed motivates some people like I've never seen. And I don't understand it. I don't know why. But boy, there's an opportunity to take advantage of the situation. They're right there. And if you allow that, then that's what you're going to continue to get. And then the needs of our community, where we really need the support, where we really should be focusing those resources, they don't get to the people. Others, they profit from it. And if it's not legit and they're not doing it the right way, by all means, they shouldn't, but they are. Yeah. And if we don't put a check on it, it's going to continue to happen. It's sad to say, it'll continue to happen.
Yeah, I mean, well, we're getting the procurement chair on tomorrow, but yeah, procurement, I think, has definitely been one of those things that keeps rearing its ugly head, procurement problems during this pandemic. Senator, thank you for your time. I know you got session at 10.
Yes, no problem. It's always good to talk to you guys, though, and look forward to the opportunity again, but do take care. I mean, and to our people out there, I mean, I know it's challenging. I think we're all feeling the wear and tear of this whole pandemic, but we just got to stay strong and do the best we can to take care of ourselves and each other.
This is going to seem like a flashback. It actually is, but I just thought of it. Back when the senators, you all signed this letter, and I believe there was a meeting out of at Adelup between, I want to say, was it like 14 senators? This was about a plan. This was a while back. I don't even remember
that
this.
was months ago.
There was a plan.
I mean, a few days, it's going to be October. I think that was back early summer, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it's almost 4 months ago, 3 or 4 months ago.
So anyway, this you guys had asked the well, the governor had said, "Hey, do you guys have a plan for this ARP thing?" And you guys ended up giving the plan, and then he said, "Hey, what about yours?" And there hasn't been anything. What do you kind of make of that? Because it almost seems like people just quit asking.
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I think it was disingenuous for the governor to ask the legislature to provide, our collective recommendations and then to not show her cards, so to speak, which she hasn't. And I don't know what the great secret is. I don't know if they're planning that, at the right time, we're going to issue our plans and it's going to be really great. It's all going to be positive. I think we need to recognize this money was never intended for the governor. And while she reminds us constantly that she has the authority of how she's going to spend it, I mean, this money is intended for our community and to get us through this pandemic and how we're going to get through this time. And we don't know. We don't know how long this is going to go on. It's not something we could say, in the new year, it's going to be, we have no idea. And we also know that, what we don't know is we don't know if this funding is going to continue. And then when it stops, then what? Because if we're going to go on our own economic engine right now with where we're at, we're not going to be in a very good place. More of our people are going to suffer because, you want them to go to work, but what jobs are they going to have? And so I think it's very critical to know how the governor's planning to spend this money so that we have a community consensus on, hey, is that the direction to go? Because I don't know where the end of the road is with where we're at right now. And it's the unknown that we're looking ahead that we need to be worried about. Right now, money's flowing and everything's happy right now for certain people, but long term, where are we going to be in the next few months? What are we going to do when the money does run out and the real numbers of where we are financially come to light? There's a lot of bragging about, we're doing so good, but really, are we as a community? I don't think so. And there's no reason why she can't reveal what her recommended or intended plans are for these funds, especially after all these months. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, we want the leader to lead, and by doing that, also being upfront and letting the people know, what is she doing with the money that was intended for our community? How does she intend to spend that money? I think that's very important. I was very concerned when we were doing the budget to just do a regular budget like this funding didn't exist, and try and fully fund the government of Guam and then leave the door open for the governor to spend this money elsewhere. And I just don't think that's how we should have done the budget. I mean, I was outvoted. But I continue, we got to look at the long term here. We got to look at the bigger issues of how can we get our community to bridge over and survive this time so that hopefully there's a better day ahead.
Well, thank you, Senator.
Okay, it's good to talk to you guys. You take care.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy. It never came out with a plan, dude.
I know.
Isn't it? It's kind of crazy. I mean, imagine when it does come out, though. People are just going to be like, microscope on that thing. Okay, what's this plan? Oh, you see the plan? But yeah, there's your update on the ARP plan. ARP plan. Let's go take a break, guys.
We kind of already know, right? 300 for the hospital.
Well, 300 is going to the hospital. GVB's getting, was it 38 million?
Or 20.
They're getting 20 for marketing, 18 for Matapeng. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Money went to quarantine.
Yeah. So they've already spent money.
Bereavement, GITA.
Right. They did the GITA program. We don't know if they spent any other money than the money I think they should do bulletins. Like, hey, we spent this money and did this. Like, what's so wrong with that? A weekly, this is what we're spending your money on. That's a lot. That's a lot to ask for. Because then they'd have to do a graphic, then they'd have to do a fancy video, and it'll come out on their Facebook in the middle of the night. It's a lot.